Paul Nathanson of Bracewell and Guiliani's Policy Resolution Group in Washington, D.C., and with me today is Josh Zive, who's a senior counsel in PRG. We're here today to talk about the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, or CFIUS, another Washington acronym. Josh has handled and advised clients on a wide range of CFIUS issues and has helped design and implement strategies regarding the legal and political aspects of CFIUS. So, Josh, why don't we start out by explaining what is CFIUS?
CFIUS is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. It was created as a function of statute in 1988 by what's commonly referred to as Exxon Florio, and it's an interagency committee that's charged with reviewing foreign acquisitions of U.S. businesses for potential national security risks.
Who serves on the committee?
Like I said, it's an interagency committee. It's a group there are 9 members, which are all agencies. It's headed by the Department of Treasury. It includes the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, among others, with each one taking the lead based upon the substance of the transaction at hand.
And how does the CFIUS review process work?
It's based most often on a voluntary notice, which is the parties to a transaction, if they believe their CFIUS jurisdiction, will submit to CFIUS a notice detailing the transaction, which is then reviewed by CFIUS over a few different statutory timelines, and ultimately, if not already approved or dealt with or withdrawn, given to the President for a final determination.
So if it's voluntary, why would anybody go through the time and expense of submitting something to CFIUS?
CFIUS is statutorily given actually a very broad grant of power that allows it to reach back and unwind transactions even after they've been closed or performed by the parties, which means if you choose to not file a notice and CFIUS determines subsequently that a transaction has a national security risk, parties could have to go through the very expensive and difficult process of unwinding that transaction, which can be far more problematic than filing a notice on the front end.
So if a U.S. company has a deal with a foreign company involving foreign investment, they should file a CFIUS application?
Well, it depends. You want to look at the facts of every transaction carefully, and it's why good advice on the front end is important. Looking to determine whether CFIUS has legal jurisdiction, and then what the likelihood is of a transaction being controversial or having national security implications, and then make a informed and wise judgment about whether you want to file a notice early in the transaction.
So is this just a legal process? It's just a legal filing?
Well, the filing itself is legal, but fundamentally a CFIUS process is a three-legged stool that rests on a political component, a communication component, and a legal component. And all of those options need to be available to parties in order to deal with potential controversies.
So CFIUS was in the news recently. President Obama announced that he's rejected a foreign investment from China based on national security grounds. Can you explain?
Sure. That transaction, which involved a group of wind farms in northern Oregon, was a complicated transaction that ultimately the president, just at the end of September, issued a final order blocking the transaction and going further and blocking a whole wide range of actions connected to any future transactions. There is pending litigation surrounding it that is going to be very interesting, I think, to follow. But certainly because it involved a Chinese acquisition of energy assets, it's something that's going to be watched very carefully by all the parties.
Some observers say that the president's actions were politically motivated since we're in the height of the presidential election campaign. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's important to distinguish between political motivation and political utility. I think the actions surrounding this specific transaction were probably at this point largely inevitable given the existence of statutory timelines and the unique facts in this case. So it may not have been politically motivated, but the fact that it was issued together with a press release from the Department of Treasury and the timing of it in the election and the fact that China and attacks on China have been a fairly consistent part of the rhetoric in the election certainly indicates that this may have political use, even if it wasn't motivated politically initially.
So are there certain countries that are going to trigger a CFIUS review? You know, obviously China comes to mind. But I'm a U.S. company, are there certain countries maybe I need to avoid, or certain countries that I know is going to trigger a CFIUS review?
Yes, not necessarily trigger a CFIUS review, but there are countries that will receive often more scrutiny or raise attention more, and that's a normal and fairly logical part of the process, which is CFIUS is concerned about the sensitivity of the items or assets involved in a transaction and the nature of the parties in a transaction. So countries which have been the subject of greater scrutiny because of national or economic competitiveness, or which are not allies of the United States in a broader sense, are going to receive greater scrutiny from CFIUS. And over recent years, there has been a belief that investment from China is an example of one that's been uniquely scrutinized by CFIUS.
So for U.S. companies and their partners or foreign investors, what can be done to minimize CFIUS delays and problems?
The key to advocacy surrounding CFIUS is to get involved early and effectively with a team that has the mix of expertise that you need. And that is the political and the legal expertise, as well as communication skills that you may need to engage the media. You have to evaluate how a transaction will be viewed by political actors, by constituents in local areas, and by CFIUS itself. Determine whether or not the filing of a notice is a prudent action. Do that as early in a transaction as possible, and then be prepared to directly engage media and politicians in order to support a transaction if it becomes controversial down the road.
And Josh, how long have you been giving advice on CFIUS transactions?
It's been I've been doing this for a little over a decade now, and pretty much my entire legal career.
Great. Well, thank you. Today we've been talking about CFIUS, and if you'd like additional information or to contact Josh, please visit our website at www.policyresolutiongroup.com.